Lesson 8, continued. This is the project Make a Library, Part 2. This is also Lesson 9 on code.org. I'm just keeping everything in one big lesson on Canvas. At the conclusion of this, you will be able to write tests for functions with a library that you designed and provide feedback to a classmate about a library that he or she designed. Now, some important strategies while testing your program. You should actually call your function or functions with different inputs. In other words, you want to take all paths through. You want to make sure that you call it with something that will go both the true path and the false path, something that will enter the loop, something that will not enter the loop. Okay, for instance, if you wanted to find, if you were doing the odds and the evens, you would want to put in an even number, an odd number, a positive odd, a positive even, negative odds and evens, things like that. You want to try every different possibility that you can think of to test out your code so that you have created a robust test that will make sure the functionality is there. You should try out values that try out different ways your function works, or right below, at, and after the cutoffs. So if you want to do something until the score reaches 5, you want to try when the score is 4, when the score is 5, and when the score is 6. Okay? So you want to try all those things for the conditional statements within your functions. There are 2 ways to test your library. You can write tests yourself. You can also give it to a classmate and ask them to try it out. It's amazing. Other people will break your stuff faster than you will. Now, as a test's refresher, here is the function isEven. Okay, isEven takes a number and then it returns whether the number is, it returns a true or a false, okay, based on whether the number mod 2 is 0. So what happens? First off, notice you've got comments up here, decides if a number is even, number, a number to decide is even or not, return, Boolean, whether the number is even. Use console.log to write tests. Console.log, 10 is even, and then you concatenate to that the isEven 10. So you're calling it with 10. You're calling it with 5, -2, and -5. Try out different values. Make sure your function works in many cases. Once working, you can simply comment these statements out so that if they're ever needed in the future, you've got them. So I could leave these here, and once I run this and I get down here and I'm like, yay, it works, I can come back up here, okay, and I can type in // in front of each one of these guys to comment them out. That way I don't accidentally delete too much, delete too little. And if I come back in here and I ever make a change to this function, I can uncomment these and rerun it without having to rewrite the tests. Okay, so that's just a little something that you can do. It doesn't take up any real space and it doesn't harm the program. Now, step 4 is test. As you program on the second day, you're going to add tests to your function to make sure that they're working as you expect. And you want to keep writing your library. You have 20 minutes to add in some tests to test out the program yourself. Okay, make sure it's all ready to go. So go ahead and pause the video and take about 20 minutes to add in those test calls using console.log. Keep writing your library. You're back. Fantastic. Now, there are a few logistical steps involved in providing feedback to one another. You will need to exchange project guides, navigate to a different level from the one you're working in, and import each other's, this is a terrible, I'll fix all that typo, import each other's library. Once this is done, proceed to testing one another's libraries by asking questions. Now, in order to share that activity guide, you can do it a number of ways. You can email it. You can have a Google Doc and give somebody else the ability to edit it. Whatever it is, you want to make sure that the other person can add in comments because you each should have somebody else typing in comments. All right. When you're looking at this and you're commenting on somebody else's, can you tell what the library is supposed to do? Do all the functions work as they're supposed to? How do you know that? Did you write the test? Did you use their tests? What are ways the library could be improved? Could there be clarity or additional documentation? Could there be additional function, ease of use? Could it work maybe in a little different way? All right, so if you think of something that could improve, let somebody know. Asking for improvement is not a bad thing, okay? And sometimes somebody might not have done that particular improvement just because of time constraints. That's okay. Now, let's see how to do this. Your feedback. Export your library. In Lesson 9, Level 2, this is in Unit 7, Lesson 9, Level 2, click Share, Show Advanced Options, Share as Library. Choose the functions you'd like to export. If you need to edit the comments before your functions are added up there, do that. And then hit Publish. Okay? So you're going to Share as Library right here. Now, Step 5, Feedback, Import a library. Go to the next level, Unit 7, Lesson 9, Level 3. You've got your little wheel up here. You're going to click on the gear, then Manage Libraries. Find your partner's library and import it. Okay, so you want to import their library. Start testing the different functions they shared with you. Those will be in the function drawer. Okay, so you'll have a toolbox. Here's your function drawer, and their functions will be in the function drawer. Now, give feedback on their document that they shared with you. Okay, on their project guide, give them feedback. Hover over blocks of code to read their documentation. You can view all the library code by clicking View Code from the Manage Libraries window. Let them know. Run it, practice it, try it, test it, and leave comments. Notice you're not writing a dissertation. There's just a couple of lines, okay? But do help them out. You all should take about 20 minutes to export, import, share, and comment on each other's code, okay? Let's go ahead and, if you're working with somebody else, pause and take 20 minutes. If you don't have a partner because you're doing this asynchronously, before, after class, all on your own, if you can work with somebody else in the class, if you've got a friend, that would be great. If not, give it a critical view. Look at yours as critically as possible and note things that where you think you could have done a better job. This will not take away from your grade. Writing code is an iterative process, okay? So take about 20 minutes to do this. All right, now improve. If you have time and you would like, improve your library based on that feedback. Especially if something's really bad, you may want to make that improvement. Now, before next class, in class, we would spend the 40 minutes. We actually have 70 minutes, so there's another 30 minutes that you could be doing this. So in class, we will continue on with this portion, or maybe have to do some of it at home. At the conclusion, you'll be able to debug a library of functions based on testing and classmate feedback, explain the purpose and functionality of a function you developed, and explain 2 different calls to a function you developed. Based on the feedback you received from your classmates and the tests that you wrote, you should know where you need to improve your functions. Before next class, you will also need to finish a set of written response questions about one of your functions, explaining how it works and describing 2 different calls to that function with different arguments. So, first up, acknowledge collaborators. If you worked with someone else, okay, if you worked with someone else back and forth, by all means, you need to acknowledge them. If you got code from somewhere else, acknowledge it. Okay, so fill out the table acknowledging the source of any code your partner wrote or that you got from any other source. If you looked it up in a book. Take about 2 minutes to fill in this portion of your activity guide. Remember, it is not a bad thing to not reinvent the wheel. Okay? Reinventing the wheel is silly. It's wasteful time. On the flip side, failure to acknowledge somebody else's contribution is worse than wasting time. Okay, so if you got something from somewhere else, that's great. You found it. Fantastic. acknowledge it. Take about 2 minutes and fill out that part of your activity guide. Now, the free response. These free response questions are very, very similar to those that you will find in code, or not in code.org, but in your create task. So first, you're going to need to copy and paste a function from your library that did all 4 things, okay? That had an effect on the functionality of the procedures and implemented sequencing, selection, and iteration. That means that it went step by step, it has a conditional in it, and it has a loop in it. So pick the function that did all 4 things, copy and paste your code into your document, okay? Again, you've got either a Word document or a Google Doc document. Either one you can do. Second thing, provide a written response that describes in general what the identified procedure does and how it contributes to the overall functionality of the program. Is even, determines if a number is even. Explains in detailed steps how the algorithm implemented in the identified procedure works. Your explanation must be detailed enough for someone else to recreate it. Okay, so if we think about the is even, which does not meet all of this, but I can talk to it in this way, okay? It determines if a number is even or not. That's the A description. The B description would be, it takes the number passed to it, performs the modulus operation, and compares the result to 0. If the number mod 0 is true, true is returned, otherwise false is returned. That's how you would do detailed steps. So someone could use the same process. Okay, and again, notice it's not a huge box. The third thing you have to do is provide a written response that describes 2 calls to the selected function. These are your test calls, okay? Each call must pass different arguments that cause a different segment of the code in the algorithm to execute. So, especially if you have an if statement, okay? If, you're going to do one that will cause it to happen and one that will cause the else part to happen, okay? 2 different calls. How do you do that? You would be passing 2 different pieces of information. What arguments are passed? What arguments are passed to the parameters that will cause it to do something different? The condition that's checked. What are you checking? Okay. What conditional statement is checked to make different segments run? So you've got something, it's going to run one way if it's true, another way if it's false. Results, what will happen be returned by this function when when call 1 happens or when call 2 happens. What's the expected result? Okay. So notice this, the condition checked is the same for both. The way you call it is different and what it returns should be different, but this is just the condition, okay? Free response. Complete the free response questions about one of the functions in your project. So you want to do that. We just went over what those free response questions are. Once you have done that, you will turn in your project guide and you will turn in your library. You hit submit on lesson 10, level 2 in unit 7. Okay, and then be sure that you turn in your project guide online in whatever manner is requested. Okay, fantastic. That should be a wrap. You should spend anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes outside of class to complete this assignment. You'll have a little bit of time in class, but another 30 to 60 minutes. Some people simply work faster than others. Okay? If you've got questions, please ask.